And we are live. This is Ian Nethercott from the famous AutoHub show. Excuse my voice. I'm dealing with recovering from a cough. Hopefully I'll be good for any day. Going to start with a video. This is a one-on-one interview I did over the weekend. It should be live later this week. And this is AJ Taquito. He's monumentally scaling direct mail guy. He's been doing it for over 45 years. That's 45 years. So this is a section from that. Play it, come on. Really? You're gonna give me trouble today? Oh, there we go. Now it's gonna play.
There was no such thing as a DMS 44 years ago. So what we would do is get Polk information. I don't know if you're familiar with Polk, but
Yep.
Polk kept track of registrations in a market area. The state would supply registration data. And we would target those people and invite them into the dealership for a 4-hour sale. It was a very controlled event. We had a complete turnkey sale where we had security guards to check the invitations and greeters, and we'd paper up the windows and put tables and chairs on the showroom floor to make a buying atmosphere, and packed all the cars in the back of the service department and wrote with shoe polish on the windows the was price and the is price. And it was 4 hours and 4 hours only. If you got an invitation to the sale, you were one of the lucky ones. And we'd sell on 10,000 piece mailer. We'd see 200, 300 ups at a sale like that. And we'd sell 30, 40, 50, 60. You know, the best I ever did was 90 cars in 4 hours. And we actually rolled that campaign across the country. And we went for all manufacturers, all brands, all types of dealerships. We went through 20 groups. Dealers would talk about this event. It was incredible. And then what happened was the OEM started to see what was happening. And so the OEM said, hey, this is a great concept. Why don't we do this for big events? So we would bring all the dealers together for a big sales event at Arlington Stadium in Dallas, where it's baseball field. We'd bring 400 trucks, 500 trucks from all the dealerships in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and mail out, instead of 10,000, we mail out 200,000 invitations over a 3-day event, and sell in those days. We'd sell 300, 400, 500 trucks in 4 days, and that rolled through the factory. So we did a sale in Denver, and we did a sale in Phoenix, and we did a sale in Los Angeles. We did a sale in Detroit. We did sales all over the country. And then it would go from one manufacturer to another. This is a very incestuous business. Everybody knows everybody. And so it just rolled through. And so for the first 25, 30 years of doing this, we were doing tent sales for Toyota, for Nissan, for Infiniti, Mazda sales events all over the country. We were all.
So good morning and welcome. And that's a section of an interview that I did over the weekend. It'll be live later this week, but let's start. Here we go.
Life is about connection, having a support system to lean on, and roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
One of the really nice things about Larry, one of the reasons that we brought him to our dealership, is he's still very much aligned with our core values and with our brand, which is thoughtful and professional service. And because that alignment really worked out well, because he was so committed to the success of others, we really knew that he was the right person to spend time with our sales team, with our managers and each sales consultant. And we're just really thrilled to have a partnership with him. And so we thank him.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged? Is it remote? For your next adventure, trust MotoClose for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Disclose Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Disclose DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub 2025 to get special pricing, including waive setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Car dealers often underestimate the power of social media. Are you wondering why my face is plastered in your newsfeed? Are you a GM, dealer principal, or a manager at a car dealership wondering why you see me all the time on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all over social media? Well, that didn't happen by chance. I target car dealers that are in-market shoppers for social media services, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for you so that you target in-market shoppers for your brand of customers that purchase your vehicles. During my Viato days, helping car dealers appraise and price cars, everyone was asking me, what do I do on social media? What do I do with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? And this was back in 2016. So here we are 10 years later. I started a company, became an entrepreneur, and now I help car dealers. They either outsource their social media needs to us, or we have a training and education center where we can teach all of your employees how to do social media in-house. 90% of consumers actually follow a business on Instagram. The average adult sits on TikTok for 2 hours a day in the rabbit hole. To learn more information about it or to get a demo from one of my sales associates, click the link below. We would absolutely love to help you.
Good morning and welcome. So let's start. So we got lots of great guests today. I believe the first guest on this morning was Rebecca. So Rebecca, maybe you can tell us more about what you do and what you're all about. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone, and certainly a pleasure to be here on your show. And thank you again for the terrific invite, Ian. I appreciate it. Been in the automotive retail for a very long time, as much as 30 years. I can't believe it. It just seems like it just happened. But what I do is I provide dealers training from the time that that customer touches down on the dealership website, working with sales folks in presentation negotiation, streamlining that event, that process, that workflow, and especially working on the desk, because we know that is the hub where it all takes place. So how that aligns with our sales associates, but also what takes place in F&I. And of course, working with our F&I folks to perform at the highest level while at the same time limiting liability. So that's what I do, and that's what I bring to the table. Thank you again. I appreciate the invite.
No problem. And if you wanted some subprime knowledge, definitely check out Rebecca's show on the AutoHub show with our other good friend from the Maritimes, talking about Sell It Smart. You know who I'm talking about. So Barry, maybe you could tell us more about what you do. Barry is a former sponsor of the AutoHub show, now back in the retail side, but go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation this morning, Ian. My name is Barry. I've been in the automotive industry for 30 some odd years, and like Rebecca, it's a little scary to say that number sometimes, but it's also it's a prideful number. I will say that. I wear it as a badge. Spent 25 years in retail, left for a few years, started a software company, and then have since sold that and moved back to retail. Love the retail side of the business. I am a GM at a major Metro Ford dealership here in Canada, and have had an opportunity to see what I probably falsely think is everything. But I know now today will deal me something that I haven't seen before and prove me wrong. But anyway, love the industry. That's what I do, and I've been on the show a little bit. I am a previous sponsor, as Ian mentioned, and I think there's a lot of worth and value on the show. So I'm glad to join this morning.
Yeah, and thanks for the inspiration for the show, Barry. My brother and I were talking to Barry in store about onboarding in the automotive industry, and he has some definite knowledge and experience to drop on the show. And the famous Dancing Sandy's on today. So Sandy, maybe you could give us a catch up on what's going on with you, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, hi everybody, and Ian, thanks always for remembering me to bring me on the show. I'm happy to be here, and I also want to say to anybody that's in California or in and around LA, sending wishes for safety and health and an end to these terrible fires. And I've been in automotive since 1998. I'm not going to count the years, but it's a lot of them too, right? So I'm happy to be here. With the we'll call us the veterans, right? So the experience is important, and I love all things people. I am a certified HR professional. That could make me certifiably crazy, maybe a little bit, but. I do love all things people, and part of what I do with Innovative Auto HR is help dealers. In particular, I work with dealers on the retail side, help them understand how to do exactly what we're going to be talking about today, right? Revolving around the EVP, the employee value proposition, because without one, you can't keep people. I try and keep my finger on the employment environment, and it's pretty interesting right now. So anyway, that's enough out of me. I want to hear from Brandy.
All right, Brandy is a sponsor for 2025. Go ahead, Brandy.
Yes, thank you. I'm super stoked for this panel. I'm really excited about this topic. 27 years as well for myself. I actually just hit 27 years of sitting in the finance office. So I have a unique resume in the way that I've gone on both the lending side as well as the dealership side. And then, of course, I've also done contract relief work for dealers. And this is just, this is so reflective of a bigger picture that does come to client experience, retention, etc. So super excited to be here as a silver sponsor. I was the creator of Motor Close and Disclose Technologies Corp. So Disclose is like a DMS, only better. We're a DMD is what we call ourselves. So we're an all-in-one platform. With that, we also created motorclose.com, which is a new third-party selling site coming to the market as well. So very excited about this topic, excited for this panel. I know Rebecca and I have crossed paths a few times. I've done, I think, a show or two with Barry. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And just in case you weren't aware, Kim is the other guest on that subprime show. Her name escaped me momentarily. So question number one, and I'll start with Barry on this. We all know onboarding and retention of staff can be a challenge in the car industry. What's the best way dealers can fix this challenge and turn it into an opportunity in 2025, in your opinion?
Well, I think I've spent, I don't know, probably 10 years working on this process, but I think one of the things that we don't do a good job of is making people feel valued really quick. I've had situations that I've seen where people have sat in a reception lounge for 2 years or 2 hours because the manager got busy and into a meeting. They forgot they were there, and it's just a catastrophe. So what we've done is from the time that the dealership and the employee agree that this is a relationship they want to have, some paperwork gets sent to them. I pick up the phone the day before they arrive and welcome them to the team. I tell them where to park. I tell them where we're going to greet them on that morning, and I make sure we're standing there. We make sure we have a gift bag with some tissue poking out the top, making it look like we actually spent some time thinking about what to get this person. And there's some swag in there. We've also made sure that their desk is cleaned out and they're not throwing the last guy's ticket and pay stubs out and the old cards and all the other stuff that goes with it, right? So potentially a lunch. And then what we do is we do a tour of the building, and in the situation I'm in right now, the owner sits upstairs and we walk the person into the owner's office and do a proper introduction. They meet everybody in the building. There's about 96 of us. It's a little overwhelming, but it is also very important to actually do that proper introduction. And then we take them for lunch, and we make sure that we have people of value at the lunch. So I go as the GM, my assistant goes. We try to have the owner there. And it doesn't matter if you're the lot guy or we're hiring a new controller, that everybody gets the same treatment. And the feedback is just over the top. Because there's a couple of things happening at that point. One, that new hire could very easily receive a phone call tomorrow from another dealership saying, hey, just going through, we'd like to offer you a job. How they answer that phone call is going to be in our favor if we've done that first day properly. And if they say, yeah, no, sorry, I've taken a job and it's amazing and I'm not even in the market anymore, opposed to, sure, how does Thursday look? The other thing is when they go home and they tell their spouse how their first day went, that stress of a new job and a family is almost alleviated. And the spouse at home goes, thank God you made the right decision. I'm so glad we did this, et cetera, opposed to all the stresses that go with that. So just a simple onboarding process. Well, not, I'm going to say simple now, but it's taken a few years to put together. But I'm going to use the word detailed. A detailed and personalized onboarding process. We try to do something that, we hired one lady, she had 6 kids, and we were all aghast at how in the world was she going to be a commission salesperson with 6 children at home. But we, so for her, we made sure that there was 6 little toy cars in her welcome bag for her kids to take home. And so just try to do that one little personal touch that they go, you listen to me, you know me, and they just, it's such a different environment when you welcome somebody. It's actually got to the point now where the existing staff is a little myth that they haven't had their onboarding. So now we welcome them to the new staff's lunch so that they can experience the onboarding experience as well. So
great.
But anyway, that's what we do. We've had tremendous success with it. Like I said, the employees love it, and I think it's very much the modern way to welcome somebody to the team. So.
Well done, Barry. And if you're looking for a Ford in Greater Calgary, Barry works at Metro Ford, just so you know. Sandy, what do you think of Barry's philosophy and his process?
Well, I sent the celebration reactions, right? Because wow, one of the things I wrote down was that Barry picks up the phone and talks to his new hire the day before they're coming in. Make sure communication was all through there. Obviously the process was set up and you know what you're going to do and where the new hire is going to be handed off. And I love that Barry didn't talk about this as just sales or just technicians, right? Because I think that it's so important that every employee, support staff, accounting staff, the staff that we often forget about sometimes because they don't work in a profit center, they're deeply important to the foundation of what goes on as well, right? So there was no distinction. So I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that it sounds like everybody gets the same experience. The experience is what is so important, of being welcomed, of especially, those 6 cars. Also, kudos to you all for, you may be wondering how she's going to do it, but the decision is up to her to see how she's gonna do it with 6 kids, right? We don't talk about those kinds of things. And ask, it's a valid thing to wonder, but anyway, so kudos to you for doing that, and especially putting that personalized thing in the welcome back, having a welcome back. I'm overwhelmed with just how awesome that is. If the whole process really, your question about that led into that was how can dealers make what we see happen often into an opportunity? Go back and replay what Barry just said. And even if you do, here's the thing about opportunity. When we don't do anything, if you do 1 or 2 or 3 little things, that's a lot. It can make a big difference, right? And a person's first few days in any new job, in any industry, are vitally important, especially anyway. So I could go on talking about how great that was, Barry. Makes me want to come and move to Canada and work for you all.
You'd be welcome anytime. Thank you.
Remember that. Okay,
I'm gonna call you like in the end of December and see if the Floridian wants to come up to Canada to work.
It's cold here.
Rebecca, what do you think? Rebecca, what do you think about how dealers can improve that process?
Rebecca, he's calling on you. Poor Ian and his voice.
Sorry,
Thank you, because I
can't hear
didn't
me.
hear it.
That's
Appreciate you, Sandy. But you know what? I gotta tell you, oh, look who it is.
Hi,
Larry,
how are
this
you,
is-
Becky? Long time no see.
Great to see you, Larry. Great to see you. Yeah. So we were just talking about, you just missed it. I mean, to tell you, Barry, he was talking about what he does for onboarding, and it is absolutely terrific. And if dealers would just wrap their arms around just doing some of what he shared with us, it would make a big difference. You know, just that phone call, welcoming the individual to the store, and expectations, setting that expectation. But when they get into a dealership, can you imagine having a gift bag, a gift to give to the new employee, whether they be in sales, whether they be in service or in F&I? Unheard of. I would love to see something along those lines, and having a better understanding and expectation as to what's going to take place. So that way they have assurance that, you know what, I made a right decision. I made the right decision to come on board. You know, with
No,
this
wait a
company.
minute, Beck. But you're going against tried and true traditions where the new salesperson becomes an indentured servant and he can't get into the computer, and half the staff is hostile to him because they think you're competing with him.
Can you imagine that, Larry? Seriously, can you imagine how, you know, if it was thought out to have something of a celebration of this individual coming to the dealership? Imagine, Larry, if you will, just for a moment, think about it. The desk is actually cleaned out and ready.
Becky, it's the classic CEO line that if you take great care of your employees, they'll take great care of your customers. And that, you know, everybody talks culture, but the bottom line is, how many dealerships have sales service meetings? How many dealerships sit down with their salespeople one-on-one, or have meetings? But I don't know how long Barry, you've been around, but I used to go to Saturday morning meetings. I guess Ian did too, where you were so demoralized. You were like down to like a one-cell paramecium, and when you were beat to death, they said, "All right, go out and sell some cars."
Hopefully most of those dealers aren't around anymore.
Oh.
You, sir, are an optimist.
Well, you know, and I just think our industry settled into mediocrity for a little bit too long. And you know, I watched a video one time of a company onboarding somebody, and what they did is they went into an office, of course, did all the paperwork, and when they came out, it was a marketing company, a major metropolitan marketing company somewhere. And what they did is they had a little signal of whatever it was, and all the people came out of their offices and they all clapped them as they came out of the HR office and welcomed them to the team, which is fantastic, except some personalities don't need that, don't want that, and would just go right back into the office and close the door again. So we started with that and we backed it down, but the spirit, just to share, is my conversation with the team is, I don't want them to think we bought them flowers at the gas station. We want to say, we thought about you. We've known you've been coming for a week. We thought about what would make a difference to your life, etc. And that's kind of that's where the baseline started, is the gas station flowers.
Barrett, just so you know, I am so much on your page and Becky's, and certainly Sandy's, and you know who I know, and Brandy. I feel exactly the same way you do. You may not know this, but I've been I know Becky for years. She's great. I've been hanging around with Ian and Jeff, his former partner, for years. And they've got me a ton of business in Canada and other places. And what Ian says to me, to prospective people is, you got to call Feldman. He answers his phone. Now, Sandy, you've been around HR forever. Why the heck should you get a medal for answering your phone? But you're not even showing people you care. If you're not willing to pick up the phone or say that's great or thank you, or actually pay attention to what they're saying. So I'm with you 100%. I think it's, what's that, Sam?
Well, you bring up a point that I brought up about Barry. One of the things that Barry said is that he calls his new employee, which I think is really amazing. And I've worked, I actually do a little recruiting for higher level, not a lot of it, but sometimes you find a new employee, you make them an offer, and then the next person they talk to is somebody in HR who doesn't know them yet, who they've never met. And especially in larger groups who are trying to create a process that is automated, which is important, right? Which is important. I think it's also important to remember to keep people in that. So then here comes an email to do your background screen and your this and that without any communication. One of the things that Barry talked about was communicating, right? Introducing people and keeping it, we have to automate and remember people, our people skills too, right?
So
And Brandy, I don't want to leave Brandy out of this conversation,
Yeah,
right?
Brandy,
So,
go ahead.
I'm jumping in so Brandy can.
Go ahead, Brandy.
Yes, I've never met Brandy.
Well, and I will say, Barry, what you described literally is the definition of the culture that every person is looking for when they're looking and never finding it. You are the unicorn. I had a similar experience when I was at Mercedes, and of course you'd think, okay, it should be, it's Mercedes. The rest of it lagged in what my expectations were, but it was what the GM did. The very first day I arrived, he took me around the store himself and exactly did the same thing. He profiled people in a way that was important to my position as well. So coming up to them, he described what they do, but beyond what their position was. He described who they are and what their strengths were in a way that it was like, hey, this guy's going to help you get this, and this done. You can depend on him for these items, etc. And to me, that was game changing, because going to most stores, you don't get an intro, you don't get a tour around the dealership. You're finding your way yourself. And as resourceful as I can be, that was impressionable to me, because never before and never after that Mercedes experience did I ever see that ever again. You touched on very important parts too, the ripple effect. The ripple effect, because they've made that change in the first place. Days 1 to 6 are so impactful, not only to what they tell their spouse at home, and yes, getting that reassurance, but exactly that, to being poached by other dealerships. Yeah, this place is a shit show. They didn't have their shit together. I have no tie to this place whatsoever. Therefore, why do I feel like I have any loyalty? And that to me is so important. Coming down to the basics as well, and also profiling the person before the position. I came from a time where I had little to no education, and for the first 3 years of my experience, I doubled my income. And so for me, for that is such an important thing to be like, exactly that. The mom with 6 kids, the this, the that, you kind of went beyond what somebody looks like on paper rather than what they will pull. Because I'll tell you, the best salespeople have the biggest vices. And if that's 3 kids, they are going to hustle like nobody else will. And so, yeah, kudos to you on everything. Yeah, I've never been more impressed with an onboarding. I don't blame the rest of the staff for actually wanting in on that action, but that also just shows you what you'll get from them as well.
It really is,
Set the
and
example.
I'm not, thank you for the kind words. That's not why I joined, but the other thing, Sammy, to follow up on your comment about the automation, what we do at the time of hire is we actually send out a calendar invite for 30, 60, 80 days. So that we actually are able to say 30 days, make sure the attendance is right, make sure everything is good, 60 days, make sure, and then at 80 days, are we keeping this person permanent? so that we're not 91 days going, I think we're going to say goodbye. Because that was the other thing we kept running into in the industry is somebody would finally get frustrated enough to say something. It's like, well, that was about a month ago. So with the automation, it is very important to your point, because there are legalities and very important things that we have to do. And not every employee stays, but we put them through our process and we know what they've gone through the day they start. So
Barry, I had a question written down because onboarding technically can last up to 18 months.
Yeah.
Right? Because the purpose of onboarding is really to bring a new hire into your culture and communicate everything and help them be reach maximum productivity as quickly as possible. So it's not, bring them in on that first day. And I had a question for you, like, what is I'm wondering, what do you all do after? And holy schmoly, there you go. You just did it.
It makes a difference. The thing that I find most amazing, and for some people it'll make a difference, some it won't, but is if I go for an onboarding lunch, I've already called them once, and I can reference that. I'm usually the one that hands them the bag and says, here's a gift from the team to you, all the different little nuances. But I will have an apprentice technician come into my office 3 weeks later saying, hey, I got a quick question for you. And there's no barrier at all to them because we've had lunch together, they know, and I'm a very open door person, but like literally we'll pop in and saying, hey, who do I ask about this? And we have that connection from top to bottom. It really is, it feels really good.
That's really important too, I think, right? Because you're the GM of the store. Yeah. So, in the store, you're the top guy or you're the top person. And so being able to have that personal type of communication is pretty amazing at your level. And I'm super, super impressed.
Cindy, it's smart at his
I
level
also-
because if he doesn't set that in motion, what flows down is something negative, right? If we see a manager behave a certain way, it's really hard to get the salespeople to behave a different way.
Yep.
Absolutely. And what I think is so great about this is that, because I don't know about the rest of you all, I am tired of talking about the problem. So I'm excited to be sitting here talking about the solution. Randy?
Yeah, no, thank you. And so many things I agree with, but especially, and you guys can tell me what you think. Barry, do you almost feel like you had to leave and come back to say, oh my God, I already know what I would change if I went back to that seat? I did this so often in my career. I would be a finance manager, then I would go work for a bank. And every time I'd be with the bank, I would do my rounds and I'd get all this awesome intel. And then I'd be like, you just wait till I sit back in that seat, what I would do with it. And I almost feel like that really is, people have to take that step back. You can get so buried deep in that day-to-day where you're not hitting it with new eyes to say, hey, this is what has to change. This guy does it wrong. 90% of the stores I see do it like this. If we made these minor tweaks, and I'm curious if you actually have to step out and re-step back in for that to actually hit home.
I think what your comments there have a lot of validity. For me, I've been working on this before I started my own company. I was able to put a few final touches on it at this store. One of the interesting things about this store is it's a single point store with the owner still sitting upstairs. And, we got 40-year technicians. We got HR lady has been here for 40 some odd years. Like, we have really deep depth. But one of the things, and Sandy, I know you run into this all the time, sure of it, is you have your 40, 30, 20-year people, then you jump to 3 months, 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 3 months, 6 months. And it's really, how do you build that 5-year, 10-year people on purpose? And so this was the start of it. And then from here, we're gonna grow this to where, what does year 2 look like? What does career path planning look like? What books have you read? What would, all the stuff that makes us feel important, not in a brain damage session, but in a hey, If you want to grow your career, here's 2 books I would encourage you to read. This is a direction we're going in. We have a book club, and we're currently reading Unrealistic Hospitality. If you haven't read it, it is absolutely incredible. Highly recommend it. And it gives the team a roadmap, a path, what we're going to be doing going forward. It's about the restaurant industry, but we can take little bits and pieces of it for the car business. That's next step stuff now, is as you get invited to book club, and we read pages 10 to 25, and then we sit and discuss and go from there. So
Thanks for that. So,
Do you see that there's a question from LinkedIn? I just wanted to point it out just to make
okay,
sure.
sorry. How do dealers retain salespeople during a down market and low demand? How do dealers retain salespeople during a down market and low demand?
just from my chair, I would say that's when you go back to work. That's when you go back into training room. That's when you go back to making sure your processes are polished and clean, and you know what you're doing, and you've rehearsed and recited, and you're on the game. It both acts as a distraction, and it actually gets you more game worthy when you come out the other side, because we'll always come out the other side. It's just our industry ebbs and flows. We just sometimes forget about it. So, but that'd be from my chair. I'm sure there's some other thoughts out there.
I would agree with you, Barry. You always get back to the basics, because when salespeople specifically get into a slump, it's usually because they stop doing what had worked for them before. And on top of that, I always point, no matter when I train or recruit, to prospecting, because while every dealer may feel if you get into a slump, business is bad, this is slow, but you still have the connections with the people that you know and who you can relate to. So if we get back to the basics and realize that we're still running our business within somebody else's without the debt service, I think it's just a matter of bringing them back to the business basics. Don't you agree, Barry?
I would add to that, if you don't mind. One of the things that I've had good successes with my sales staff is when they are in a down cycle, the best thing they can do is phone past people who bought from them that like them. Give them some positive energy. Feel what you need to feel before you start making some more calls, whatever you got to do. Make 10 out of 10 cold calls and phone 2 people that love you. And that'll keep you alive and keep you going. And so if you're in a down market, you just phone all your past customer. How's your vehicle? How do you love it? Oh, I still love it. You still there? I can't believe you're still there. Yeah. And you get a little pump from that, right? And sometimes we just have to slap up that vein and go to work.
Yep. Hey, Becky, you used to use a cattle prod, didn't you? Just try to get their attention. Just want to see if you're paying attention, Becky.
Paying attention.
Good.
I think it's important to ask also, what are you losing people to, though, as well? Are you losing them to a competing store down the street? Then it's probably culture and promises made. If you're losing people to other industries, then you have to look at those industries and what are they doing to get the people in the first place. One example, RBC, when I worked for RBC, and this was so under promoted, is that they had a program called the RBC Advantage. And what it did was it came into a dealership. You didn't even have to be flooring with them. They would come into the dealership, they'd send a specialist who would help the HR department show you how to create an RRSP program. So they would, and it could be a dealer actual contribution was anywhere from 0 to 100%. So the dealer could say, hey, listen, part of our actual onboarding is you get a specialized RSP management consultant. We can take money right off your check. You need any questions answered, they're there to answer every and all question on all the investments, etc. And then also by year 2, guess what? We're going to contribute 10% for you. By year 3, we're going to contribute 20% for you. So what are you doing to give back to staff now, as well as one of the biggest things, rather than looking at what your competitor is doing and what they're paying for the actual position, start paying what the position's worth and what you're losing it to.
Brandy, that's a great point.
Comment.
Sandy, you had a comment?
Well, I think that, part of what Brandy, I feel like, was talking about is what the value proposition is for any hire, right? For any of our employees to get, it's the same thing as sales, right? Except now, when we're talking about people, your customer is now your internal customers, right? And if we just employ the same amazing skills we have for external customers, employ that same stuff, we'd be a lot better off. But to build your EVP, your employee value proposition, you need to have to offer to this very interesting workforce, which at times can have 5 generations in talk about diversity. We've got generational diversity, deep generational diversity, right? So your value proposition has to be something that's going to attract all of them. And I think like investments and 401k and ways for people to save attracts all people, right? Especially, maybe surprisingly, but like Gen Z, they're super focused on practical things, right? You have to remember what this generation watched. Their parents lose a lot in 2007 and 8, right? And so they're very focused on how they can be safe in a world where lots of times they can't even afford their own apartment, right? Without living communally right now. Anyway. So building that value proposition is something that I help organizations figure out how to do. Figure out what you got, figure out what you need to get, and then how to communicate that, right? And Barry, once again, you get like the gold star, 5 gold stars in this show today.
You're being too kind now.
It's just the truth, right? Because I feel like your store is really communicating what the value proposition is. And to the Mike Moran, I think, is the gentleman who posted on LinkedIn that question about keeping salespeople in a market that's really hard. Or it can be hard, especially coming out of the last few years, is when we had the chip shortage during COVID and all of that, when people didn't actually have to work so hard anymore, right? Because there were people standing in the line paying way over. It was crazy. And maybe some of those sales skills were lost, right? So keep training. But I would say do all that stuff anyway in any market, and make sure what you've told the new employees, what you told them to get them to come, right? And work for you is actually true and authentic, and that they're receiving that, right? And
we actually have a phrase that says, just do what you say you do.
Right?
It doesn't really get any simpler than that.
It's got to be authentic. The value proposition has to be authentic.
Yeah.
If you say there's room for growth, right? Like you can go and do you have prepared your career paths? How does somebody get from reception to being office manager or controller, right? I'm going to use the less talked about, yet super, super important, because you can't operate without accounting. Some of my favorite people in the dealership and retail were actually the lot people, detail, people in the back of the house. When I worked.
Well, to bring some focus on that, Sandy, we talk about this a fair bit. Is if I don't show up one day, the building might not even know. But if receptionist is 20 minutes late, the whole thing's on fire. So let's use that as an establishment of who's more important.
That's hilarious.
Right? Lot guy doesn't show up, everybody doesn't know what to do.
Barry, that's very humble and very unlike most GMs to approach that way, just so we're clear.
So Larry, where do you find people, Larry, in 2025? How do you find these people that Barry and everybody else needs?
Barry, I don't know if Ian told you, I had a training recruiting company for the last 12 years. I find all kinds of service personnel, office personnel, sales. I think the key, and Barry, you'll appreciate this, is I just make things very simple. I make it very easy for them to communicate. If you read most ads, I should be very grateful because whoever's writing them, it's almost like in big block letters, here's why we're not going to hire you, don't bother us. They're too long, they're too complicated. So I just put out simple ads and make it easy for me to be reached, or my people to be reached, and then I'm expeditious about doing it. I met Sandy through Ian, but I met Rebecca and Brandy over forums like this. And I reached out, and I think I can humbly say that I'm really good friends with Becky, and I've become really good friends with Brandy. I didn't do anything special. I reached out, they reached out back, and all of a sudden we were sparking along. The magical thing you said earlier is communication. It's all about communicating. The reason onboarding goes so wrong is people advertise for what they don't want. They don't ask the right questions. The interviewees don't understand what it is that they're looking for. But if you can clearly lay out, this is what we want, this is what's expected, this is what you can accomplish if you work with us, and by the way, we're going to have your back. It's really not that complicated. The only problem I have now, which I think anybody that recruits does, is the nature of people is a little different than it was maybe 30 or 40 years ago. They're a little more arbitrary, and you mentioned the 30 and 40-year employees. They're a lot less common these days than the person that's had 5 jobs in 1 year. And the crazy thing is, my dealership that I own was in a neighborhood that was basically built on special finance because it was in a poor neighborhood. And one of the ways we got paper hung, Becky, you'll appreciate this, is I'd say, look, I know the credit's a little bad, but the guy's been on his job 9 years. And that would push it through. Well, you'd have a heck of a time doing that because 5 jobs in 2 years now, we all see it all the time. So I think it's just a matter of putting out there exactly what you're trying to accomplish, being expeditious with the people when they reach out, and being as honest and straightforward as you can possibly be. Because I think everybody on this panel will agree what people are starved for now is civility. And again, Ian says, Larry answers his phone. I should not get a damn bold store for answer my phone, but I do because almost everybody else I call, I can't get. And Brandy, sometimes they call me. It's really important to call me back. Well, how the hell do you want me to do that? Should I send up smoke signals or,
Yeah.
I think, Barry, it's just strictly a matter of taking your golden rules and working with them, communicating.
So
let people know this is what we want and this is what you can expect.
Here's the last little bit of this whole thing though. Actually, selfishly, taking them out for lunch is their final interview. And we actually get to find out who we really hired at lunch. How do they interact with the staff? How do they actually talk to the rest of the team? Can they start a conversation? We literally had somebody go on their phone at lunch and start just scrolling while we waited for the order. So we've seen everything, but we know on day one, we know who we got and whether we should go back to those applicants and maybe reopen the conversation or whether we're good to go.
As far as the guy that scrolled on his phone while he was sitting with his future boss, they asked Einstein, what's the difference between genius and stupidity? And he said, genius has its limits. So I guess that explains that.
A little bit.
Barry, that's awesome. Have you ever read there's a book called The No Asshole Rule? And
I haven't, but I'm writing it down.
It's such an amazing book. And because of that book, one of the things that I often recommend is to just do that, even if it's coffee. Because as soon as you see how your potential new hire treats the service staff, whether they treat them as a person, say hello, hey, smile, or as if they are just, us there to, they are there to do their job, but not treat them as a person, right? Like you can.
Oh, and beyond that, actually, what I'm looking for is their processing speed. When it comes time to order, do they know what they want? If they need something special, they're quick, they're on it, opposed to, well, I don't know,
That might not be fair, because it takes me forever. It takes me forever to figure out what I
No,
want.
but it depends on their role, right? Like if you're gonna be a service advisor, you better be, let's go. Like my wife can take the longest to make a decision sometimes. I love her dearly, but in her role, that's what she sometimes needs, is the overthought. And so if that is what the role is, if we're hiring for a warranty person, I have no problem with them thinking it through in 80,000 different directions, because that's what I need a warranty person to do. But if I'm hiring someone in sales, or if I'm a service advisor, we better be rapid fire on that stuff. And then when we leave, so the way we choose our restaurants is we choose non-franchise restaurants within our area of responsibility. Then we take a picture of the person with the sign of the restaurant behind them. Then we do a social post saying, hey, big shout out to Bob's Burgers. Great burgers today. Well, please welcome Timmy as a service advisor. So then Bob's Burgers gets a hold of that and says, let's push that out again. And so we get a little bit of traction with that too. So we prove that we shop local. We show that we are we're choosing small business to support small business, and we get a little traction on media a little bit too. So
Awesome.
So smart.
So one thing I would like to talk about real quick, if you don't mind, I would like to add for F&I think it's a little bit different in that I think we need to cultivate from the floor, from promoting from within. I would much rather have someone on the bench to work to develop than pull from the outside if we can. And I think too many times we pull in that individual who's going to be the star athlete and then turns out to be toxic, turns out to be somebody else's problem. But we're sold on this high performance. He can show everyone else his high performance, when it turns out that's not necessarily the case. And it can create animosity in the team. It is so much better when we can build our team in F&I from the floor, when we can promote from the floor, and not just sales, by the way. It can also be, I can tell you how many we had promoted from the accounting department, from BDC, from other departments into that F&I office that turned out to be terrific, that had high performance, and frankly, with no headache. These are the folks that are going to stay. It reduces turnover when we can develop our folks from within. So I wanted to share that perspective as well, and I think that that's important. It's nothing better than promoting someone from service into F&I, and it does work, and it makes all the difference. My 2 cents.
That is so huge, and yes, so well said, and very important. And I also want to note that this is one practice I actually don't know if I've ever heard anybody say, but when somebody gives their notice, yeah, what can we do to keep you? They don't say, is there another position you feel better suited for? How is that conversation not open? It might come up with a big, well, actually, I wanted to get into finance, but the person in there just wasn't having it because I pissed them off 4 months ago. And so, yes, that is such a huge stress before they exit, also to have that discussion. Well said.
Yeah, and so it's not always the best fit, perhaps, in F&I, but maybe the best fit in service or vice versa. But we always have to look at our folks from within. And we always have to look at that roadmap to success. So when I bring this individual on, what is that roadmap to success? What does that look like? What are my expectations? How can I have continuing education all the time to create that path to success? This is what we do, and this is why we do what we do. We need to have continuing education for sales associates. We need to make sure that we embrace that, to take that to the next step, whether it be in F&I or service or BDC or whatever other department that they may have interest in. We have to start thinking about how we can grow our people. in our stores. And it's not just the 30-day wonder. Can they let, and I'm sure you can understand that mentality. Let's just see if they can hang out for 30 days and see whether if they do, then okay, great, then it's 60 or 90 days. We have to look at the future with every hire, really.
And Brandy,
And I have found when that happens, we do really well with that.
Your point was great, and I think a lot of people don't understand the true, I'm not talking about what a recruiter charges, but what the true cost of losing an employee is. So keeping people in the fold that are already familiar with your system and your culture, and maybe they're just not in the right role, right? I mean, hey, not everybody's suited. How many times have we seen the Peter principle at work, where a terrific salesman gets pushed to be a manager and he's a horrible manager? And I've seen managers that weren't really good salespeople, but they were more suited to nurture other people.
Well,
So
like,
you're 100% right, Brandon.
to your point, Larry, like they're two completely different skill sets. Like one is a selfish, driven, step on anyone's forehead to get where I want to be. And then the other one's suddenly supposed to nurture. And when somebody calls in and says their cat's sick, is supposed to have compassion. Where you put your top salesperson in there and you got an HR catastrophe. Like, so they're completely different mindsets, I believe. And one of the things we struggle to agree with kind of everybody here is we, as much as we want to hire from within, sometimes we should step out and actually get the skill set we actually need, not necessarily the years of experience. You know, because we are a terrible industry for going out and hiring somebody from the restaurant industry to manage a sales team, which is what maybe it should be. Not necessarily, oh, well, you've been here the longest and you sold the most cars, you get to be a manager. But anyway, that's a whole other topic.
So Barry, how do we start? How does a dealer start? How does a dealer start building this process?
I'm gonna keep it quick, just looking at the time. It's actually really quite simple, to be honest with you. The first couple of steps, the phone call is easy, greeting is easy, having a little gift bag. I go to Michael's, I buy a gift bag and some tissue. The morning of the onboard, I walk through the parts department and I say, what's not selling? And I grab a mug and a t-shirt and I put it in a bag and I stuff it. We have some pre-signed cards that say welcome in about 6 different languages. We made them up ourselves. It gets sat on a spot in my office so that depending who's walking the person around, they can just reach in and grab the bag and say, here, this is a gift from the team. And then you go for lunch. And honestly, if you start there and then build it towards your own culture, I don't think it gets any simpler than that. It doesn't have to be a carbon copy rubber stamp. It just is, start with those 3 or 4 items and then build it to what your culture actually is. That would be my feedback here.
And sensitive to time, final thoughts from everybody. Let's start with Sandy. Go ahead.
So Ian, thanks for having me and a really great conversation. I'm going to answer your questions that you put in the chat real fast. One, why do I think that dealers not really focus so much on retention is because they don't really realize how much money they're spending for hiring. And my challenge is, I do a workshop for this. My challenge is for recruiters for anything is figure that number out, multiply it by the number of hires you've had over the last year. And that's real, actual money. Anyway, where I think dealers should start. We have a need for recruiters. I do some recruiting. Larry has a wonderful business. Every single organization, whatever number of employees you have, that's how many recruiters internally you have. If your current employees are not telling their family and friends to come and work for you, you need to start out why. You need to find out why and start there. That's all.
Becky?
I was
You got 3 of us that end in an E though, hey? Larry, Becky,
I'm gonna let Brandy. You go ahead. You go ahead. Take it.
I will just say, of course, I totally agree with everything everybody says. Think outside the box. Maybe revisit pay. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Definitely not. It's not working for them either. Start thinking about what you need to attract and why you would come and work for you as well. You ask yourself those questions, and I'm sure you'll answer. You'll find your answer.
Larry.
Larry?
I got it. First of all, it's really great to see everybody. And it's really, to me, it's simple. Treat the people that work with you like you want them to treat your customers, like you're really glad they're here, that you're interested in a long-term relationship, and just make it happen. You know, a smile here and there, a little thought, taking people out to lunch, occasionally pulling them into the office and saying, how you doing? Anything I can do to help, I really appreciate it. But it was really nice to see everybody, and between all of us, hey, maybe we can make a dent in some of the craziness around us, huh?
So I will
If
end
nothing
and I
else-
will say thank you again for the invite, Larry. It's great to see you, and hopefully we can catch up soon. It's been too long since we had a great
Why don't
conversation.
we take Ian out to lunch and we'll bring some throat lozenges? It sounds like that would really be a mission of mercy this morning.
I think so too. I think that's he could certainly use that. But again, I think it's really important that as a GM, and as Barry mentioned, I think we need to be out and about and be visible. I think managers got to get off the desk. They got to be out. They got to be on the floor. They got to be interactive, and everyone has to be in unison and be there for the team. Be there for the team, not just for sales, but for everyone. That impacts and especially with that communication, how important that is, and just letting people know, hey, I care. That's it. I love this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks. Have a good week.